Hello, my name is Marissa Uzzolino,
Hi, I'm Shannon O'Hara.
and our presentation is on the cause and effects of the Civil War. Any war, whether it is a civil war or a war between two different countries, has many causes which initiate it, and the same wars have some long-lasting effects. In case of the American Civil War, there were a few main causes and many long-lasting effects that had an impact on American history.
In 1860, Abraham Lincoln was elected President of the U.S. Not only the election, but many things that range from economical problems to even discrimination of race. Other problems consisted of slavery, the abolitionist movement, difference in economy, and the Western expansion all had to do with the cause of war.
North versus the South. When Abraham Lincoln was elected the president, the southern states in the U.S. felt that they may get into trouble due to their slavery habits and due to Lincoln's anti-slavery stand. South Carolina succeeded on December 20th, 1860. Within the next 2 weeks, 6 other southern states had left the Union, including Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Texas. And this is just a picture of the Union states and the border slave states that did not secede, states that seceded after the fall of Fort Sumter, and the states that seceded before the fall of Fort Sumter. Economic and social differences. While the northern states that were more into industries supported Lincoln, and the southern states who were more into agriculture felt the need to indulge in slavery for their survival of their occupation. This disparity between the two set up a major difference in economic attitudes. The South was based on the plantation system, while the North was focused on city life.
Since the time of the Revolution, two camps emerged: those arguing for greater states' rights and those arguing that the federal government needed to have more control. Many felt that the new Constitution ignored the rights of states to continue to act independently. They felt that the states should still have the right to decide if they were willing to accept certain federal acts.
Slave and non-slave state proponents. The Compromise of 1850 was created by Henry Clay and others to deal with the balance between slave and free states, northern and southern interests. That's a picture of the battlefield versus the Confederate and the Union. So, in conclusion, the main issue that led to the disruption of the Union was the debate over the future of slavery. That dispute led to secession, and secession brought about a war in which the northern and western states and territories fought to preserve the Union, and the South fought to establish Southern independence as a new confederation of states under its own constitution. So, some devastation after the war. When the war was over, 620,000 men had been killed. The North lost a total of about 364,000 soldiers. Also, more than 37,000 black soldiers lost their lives fighting for freedom. The conditions of the war were so bad that more men died of disease and sickness than on the battlefield. The physical devastation was largely limited to the South because most of the fighting took place there. Most of Richmond, Charleston, Atlanta, Mobile, and Vicksburg laid in ruins. The countryside that armies passed through had gutted plantation houses and barns, uprooted railroad lines, and burned bridges.
Crops were destroyed or confiscated, and much livestock was dead. For months, renegade bands of Confederate and some Union soldiers roamed the countryside. With nothing to go back to, they robbed and attacked settlers and farmers throughout the South.
After the war, the Civil War lasted 4 years and was one of the most tragic wars in American history. More Americans died than in any war combined. The nation was torn apart, but some of the long-lasting effects are important to American history. The nation was reunited, and the southern states were not allowed to secede. The South was placed under military rule and divided into military districts. Southern states then had to reapply for admission to the Union.
The Union victory in the Civil War in 1865 may have given some 4 million slaves their freedom, but the process of rebuilding the South during the Reconstruction period, 1865 to 1877, introduced a new set of significant challenges.
During Radical Reconstruction, which began in 1867, newly enfranchised blacks gained a voice in government for the first time in American history, winning election to Southern state legislatures and even to the U.S. Congress. At the end of May 1865, President Andrew Johnson announced his plans for Reconstruction, which reflected both his staunch unionism and his firm belief in states' rights. Under Johnson's presidential Reconstruction, all land that had been confiscated by the Union Army and distributed to the freed slaves by the Army or the Freedmen's Bureau reverted to its pre-war owners.
Other achievements of Reconstruction were the South's first state-funded public school systems, more equitable taxation legislation, laws against racial discrimination in public transport and accommodations, and ambitious economic development programs including aid to railroads and other enterprises. Finally, slavery was effectively ended, while slavery was not officially outlawed under the passage of the 13th Amendment. The slaves were set free upon the end of the war.
Reconstruction comes to an end. After 1867, a large number of Southern whites turned to violence in response to the revolutionary changes of Radical Reconstruction. The Ku Klux Klan and other white supremacist organizations targeted local Republican leaders, white and black, and other African Americans who challenged white authority. Racism was still a potent force in both South and North, and Republicans became more conservative and less egalitarian as the decade continued. In 1874, after an economic depression plunged much of the South into poverty, the Democratic Party won control of the House of Representatives for the first time since the Civil War. Some long-term effects.
The federal government proved itself supreme over the states. Essentially, this was a war over states' rights and federalism, and the victor was the power of the national government.
The long-term effect of the Civil War on the U.S. economy was to accelerate the development of big business manufacturing in the North, initiated by the demands of war production. The Compromise of 1876 marked the end of Reconstruction as a distinct period, but the struggle to deal with the revolution ushered in by slavery would continue in the South and elsewhere long after that date. A century later, the legacy of Reconstruction would be revived during the civil rights movement of the 1960s, as African Americans fought for the political, economic, and social equality that had long been denied them. The Civil War helped the country experience an economic boom. With the Southern states out of Congress, laws were passed during the Civil War that allowed for the building of the Transcontinental Railroad, for the homesteading of the Great Plains, and for the creation of land-grant colleges. All of these things helped to boost the economy of the United States, helping to make it into the world-class industrial power that it was within 50 years of the beginning of the war. And these are our works cited. Thank you.
Thank you.